I'd like to call to order the Ramsey County Regional Rail Authority. Roll call, please.
Carter. Here. Modis Castillo. Here. McDonough.
Here.
McGuire. Here. Reinhardt. Here. Ortega.
Aye. I'll entertain a motion on the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Hearing no discussion, roll call.
Carter.
Yes.
Modis Castillo.
Yes.
McDonough.
Here.
McGuire. McGuire.
Aye.
Reinhardt.
Aye.
Ortega.
Aye. Today we have a presentation for the Gold Line.
Minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry, minutes. Move on the
So
move
moved.
for approval of the minutes. Hearing no discussion, roll call.
Carter.
Yes.
Modis Castillo. Yes. McDonough.
Aye.
McGuire.
Aye.
Reinhardt.
Aye.
Ortega.
Aye. We'll move to item 4, which is the Metro Gold Line Bus Transit update presentation. This is for information only, no actions to be taken, but
No actions, Commissioner. Mr. Chair, Commissioners, Mike Rogers I'm a Transit Project Manager with Public Works. Chris Beckwith of the Gold Line Project Office is here to give the first part of the presentation. I'll follow it up with a little bit of additional information at the end of the presentation. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Chris.
Thanks,
welcome.
Mike. Mr. Chair, Commissioners, it's great to be here today. I think this is the first presentation that I've given before the board as the Gold Line Project Manager. So happy to be here today to provide a brief update on the great progress on the Gold Line. So a little bit about me. I actually worked on the Green Line Central Corridor project. I was the project director when that project opened. I also worked on Southwest and I worked on the Botno projects as well. But really, half my career was with MnDOT on the highway side as a highway engineer, and about half in the transit sector here. So this has been an exciting project because it kind of combines both of those worlds. So again, brief update on the Gold Line. So we are a 10-mile route. We have 21 stations total. That includes 10 station pairs downtown on 5th and 6th Street. We call them pairs because they are only one-way platforms. And then there's 11 stations outside of downtown. The EA is studying 2 alternatives. One terminates at the Union Depot, on the backside of the Union Depot. The other alternative proceeds through downtown. It stops at the front side of the depot, proceeds through downtown to the Smith Avenue ramp, and then circles back on the alignment. Both of those are being studied as part of the environmental assessment. The locally preferred is actually the route all the way through to Smith Avenue, but we are studying both. We have 4 types of guideway, or the BRT lanes that the bus drives on. We have sections of mixed traffic, but the thing that makes Gold Line unique and different from other BRT projects is that we are primarily in dedicated BRT-only lanes. So that makes this unique to this area and kind of a feature project actually for FTA as well. There aren't too many of these across the country. So this kind of shows some configurations of different ways that the bus can interface with the driving lanes. We've got the dedicated curbside running, and that's usually separated just by striping, so it makes it a little easier to plow when you're plowing from the roadway lanes to the bus lanes and out. The 2 shown on the bottom are dedicated side running, and so those are usually separated by a raised median. So the bus lanes can be on one side of the driving lanes, or they can be down the middle. And so we've got all 4 of these configurations on the Gold Line. Couple fun facts here. Although most of the trips are not going from end to end, not going from Woodbury to Smith Avenue ramp, you could do that trip in under 40 minutes. About 80% of the trips are peak rides that are originating to or from downtown to the suburbs. So most people aren't taking that end-to-end. Much like the Green Line, people are not usually taking the end-to-end trip, but it's more the trips in between. You won't even need a schedule. It's 10 to 15-minute frequency, so you can actually just show up at a station and hop right on. You won't even need that schedule. That's a huge benefit of riding these types of transit lines. We are going to be serving 20% of all Twin Cities households without cars along the Gold Line route, which is a great feature of this particular transit line. And then jobs. Access to, we're estimating 95,000 jobs just a quarter mile from the Gold Line. This shows a map of that zero car.
Excuse me. Yeah,
Could you go back to that?
Absolutely.
last? I think when you read the 20%, I think that's worth really zeroing in on, because it is 20% of all Twin Cities households, the entire region, without cars, live along the Gold Line route. I mean, that's pretty amazing, the amount of service that is going to be provided to get people to and from work and to other places as well. But when I first read it, I thought it was like 20% of the people that live along the line. And no, it's 20% of all Twin Cities households without cars live along that line. And I just wanted to highlight that so that people understood just how important this line is.
Thank you for that, but you know what? On top of that, all of our lines, if you look at them, they impact this number, it grows.
Yes, it does.
All of our lines have been along neighborhoods where transit is a critical factor for either health services or employment opportunities or education.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Reinhardt, it is an important fact. It even has its own slide. So we have a map here. Yeah, so we wanted to really emphasize this point of the zero car households in the project area communities and just kind of highlighting that. We are continually looking at this statistic to really hone it in and feature this as we go forward because we're really proud of this, this particular fact of the Gold Line. We also serve a little over 22% of low income and 44% people of color along the Gold Line route as well. So those are important statistics as well. To give you a quick update on the project development phase, so the FTA, the Federal Transit Administration, has us in the 2-year project development phase, so for the New Starts funding program. So we're about 75% through that. You've got to achieve a couple of things in that 2-year project development phase. The biggest one is completing your environmental, so our environmental assessment and our environmental decision document, which we expect in January. You also need to complete a 30% plan set and the cost estimate to go along with that. So those are some key things that are required to complete that project development phase. In the project development phase, we have $25 million that has been committed to fund this phase. This shows kind of the shares of that with state funding, CTIB funding, Washington and Ramsey County. Now we have drawn down all the state funding and all of the CTIB funding, and now we're drawing down the Washington and Ramsey shares proportionately. I don't expect that we're going to expend all of the $25 million. We actually are going to switch over to this engineering cooperative agreement January 1st. So there will be remaining funds here that the board will decide what to do with. Another great thing is our outreach over the past year and a half during project development, and actually before that with Washington and Ramsey County as well. We've utilized a variety of different strategies as shown on this slide, and one aspect I've really enjoyed is being at these open houses and these pop-ups and these community events right along with your staff. So Ramsey County staff has participated in these, city staff, Washington County staff. We've got the Community and Business Advisory Committee. We've got folks that are on that group that are staffing these tables with us. So it really is a joint effort. And I just really enjoy that as being a Met Council employee to see the true partnership on this project because we feel it and it definitely is being reciprocated by our partners as well. So thank you for that. Lots of outreach events. Some of those statistics are shown here. And keeping in line with the other transit projects that have gone before us, we have a community outreach and engagement lead, Liz Jones. Many of you might have met her already. She's on our Gold Line staff dedicated to our project. She's been going to the fairs. She goes to different events on weekends and the evenings and National Night Out. She's very engaged and has really met quite a few people along the route as well. So that's been a really great thing for us. And this just shows some of the strategies as well. So just to summarize the year and a half of project development, the refinements that have been made, we've added or replaced station ped connections at every single of the routes outside of downtown. We've done station upgrades downtown. We had originally planned to just do enhanced bus stops downtown, but really at the urging of the county, the Ramsey County and city partners, we really wanted to see something more than just enhanced bus stops. So those are full stations downtown now throughout all the way to Smith Avenue ramp. We've refined 3 park and rides, so we've adjusted the sizing of those park and rides. We've eliminated 2 parking structures, so Sunray will be a surface lot. Woodbury Theater will be split into 2 with the Woodbury 494 park and ride, and that was cost neutral to add that additional park and ride at the end of the line. We have grade separation, so meaning the Gold line alignment goes under Ruth Street and then it goes over McKnight. So those were 2 additions that'll increase travel time. And then we reviewed our bus propulsion assumptions. So we are considering all the way up to a fully electric fleet or a diesel fleet, or maybe a combination of the 2. We're not going to pursue the hybrid. It's going to be either diesel or electric or a combination. And then we've got 2 bridges here that are inside the project scope now. The Helmo-Bielenberg Bridge has regional solicitation funding already for the local share of the roadway lanes. And then the 4th Street Bridge is funded by the project, but we're continuing to seek additional funding for the local share of that as well. This shows a summary of the cost.
Excuse me, before you continue, can you make that little bus move again? Trista really
You
like
really
that.
like that?
Yeah.
One more time. I know, it's really high tech.
Yeah. Thank you. It's really great.
It's good stuff. Thanks for enjoying that. Okay, this just shows a summary of the estimated cost splits from project development all the way through construction and showing the Ramsey County anticipated shares. It's really up to $460.9 million, and the reason for that is we have not made the decision on the type of bus propulsion. So we don't know if it's going to be electric. We'll make that decision during the engineering phase, working with our funding partners and our project partners, and then Metro Transit is actually testing electric buses right now. So we don't want to jump in with both feet into electric buses until we know it's going to work. So that's why we're up to 460.9. The top 3 shows kind of the progress through project development so far. In May of 2019, our Corridor Management Committee had recommended scope and then identified funding, which brought us to the board today, seeking those local funding commitments, which will actually help us as we apply to enter engineering with the FTA. Those local funding commitments are required to do that. And then we'll apply for that entry into engineering probably in January. It could take 3 to 6 months, though, to actually get into engineering. So it's not a quick process, but we'll definitely keep you updated on that. That's all I have today. Are there any questions?
Any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time. Oh, hold on. Jim?
No question. I just want to recognize the work that the project team has done, you and Charles and Alyssa and everybody. I think you've just done a really great job of threading all the needles. These are complex, lots of different self-interest and a greater good interest along the whole corridor. And I just want to just take a moment and recognize the good work that everybody's been doing to get to yes and figuring out how to get us forward on our next transit investment in the East Metro. So thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah,
Mr. McDonough, thank you very much.
I'd like to echo that. Most folks, I mean, we have a 2-minute presentation. Both Jim and I know all the little intricacies you went through to bring consensus among the 2 counties, so thank you.
Absolutely, and every one of your staff here has been on committees and in our project management team and has really also helped us get to this point today, so thanks to all of them as well.
Mike?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioners, as you heard from Chris, there's a funding commitment request coming. It will be before both the county board and the rail authority next week. So I'm here to give just a little bit more information about what that is and why it's important, what the commitment actually means. So as you saw from Chris's presentation, we still have a long way to go, but we've made a lot of progress to get to where we are. We're in project development. That'll wrap up early next year. We'll then seek FTA approval or Federal Transit Administration approval to go into engineering. Get through that in about 2 years, seek their approval once again to get into construction, build the corridor, open it for service in 2024. We are being asked to commit the funding to pay for all of that construction as well as operation. We're not being asked to write the check today or next week or next month. We're just being asked to say, we are good for the money. We have revenue sources that can cover this money. It's not the last decision the county will make. Again, we'll be in there to sign these specific agreements through the Gold Line Joint Powers Board for engineering for construction, approve the allocation of the funds through budget measures and those sorts of things. So why are we doing it? It seems kind of early if we still have 4 or so years to go of work. We're doing it now because in project development, it's the first time the project formally gets rated by the Federal Transit Administration. And the Federal Transit Administration looks at the project justification side, that's really the technical data, and says, you're gonna rank on all these categories between high and low, and if you can't get a medium, you won't be a project that can proceed. They'll also look at the financial or the local financial commitment side and say, again, if you can't get a medium on all these, you won't go forward. The project or the FTA then combines the two, and you've got to get a medium or higher to continue on. So we're trying to position ourselves to get the best rating possible. And the way we do that is on the local financial commitment side, there's one thing the counties can control, and there's two things the Metropolitan Council controls. And the Metropolitan Council controls how reasonable is the plan. Do we really have good operating numbers? Do we really have good capital cost numbers? That's through the Gold Line Project Office and the work that Chris is doing. There's also the current financial condition. How many times have fares been raised in the past decade? Are routes being cut or are routes being expanded? Can you pay for the system you have? Because it doesn't make sense to add more to the system if you can't afford what you already have. The piece that Ramsey County Rail Authority, Washington County control is really that funding piece. We control our levies and we control the local option sales tax for the transit side. That's where our revenue comes from. We can see where it's going to be. We have forecasts. We control where that money goes, and that's how we have control in this rating process. So there's a lot of regions that maybe can commit 30 or 40% of the money at this time, whereas the more money you can commit to that total cost as well as operation, the higher your project rating will be. So when the resolutions come before you next week, they're going to be asking for 100% of that commitment of both what it's going to cost to build the project as well as what it will cost, our portion of what it would cost to operate, which is 25%. That gives us the best opportunity to get the highest rating possible from the FTA for the project. What that really breaks down to is about $121 million between Ramsey County and Ramsey County Rail Authority to be split, and then that 25% of the net operating cost once the project is up and running. And this can get kind of complicated because you have Ramsey County Rail Authority, Washington County Rail Authority, all putting money into this project. That's why both the county board and the rail authority back on July 23rd voted to create the Gold Line Joint Powers Board. That Joint Powers Board is effectively one governmental agency representing all four to deal directly with the Metropolitan Council on these agreements and to keep the project going forward. So the role of that Joint Powers Board is to get funding annually from its members, enter into agreements like the engineering agreement, construction agreement to pay for those things for the Metropolitan Council, as well as provide oversight of the project. So jointly working with the Metropolitan Council on what's the scope of the project, how much is it going to cost, how are we doing with schedule, are there delays, are there ways to speed things up, and we know there's going to be uses of contingency down the road, so we need to make sure we have a role in how that contingency is used. So that's really the role of the Joint Powers Board. And when we look out to future action, this Joint Powers Board is going to have those agreements to enter into. It's going to provide that project oversight. But what about the county and the rail authority? What are their future roles in this outside of being members of the Joint Powers Board? Ramsey County will have annually to approve the requested budget amount from that Joint Powers Board. So every year, the Joint Powers Board will have a budget to fund the agreements it's entered into with the Met Council. That request will come back to Ramsey County to say, hey, this is your portion, please provide the funding. As well as once this corridor is up and running, there will be a separate operating agreement that will come to Ramsey County to provide its share of the operating funding with the Met Council. When it comes down to the rail authority, they will be asked for that annual approval for the Gold Line Joint Powers Board budgets as well, since they are providing a portion of that budget. So this is the way to say, okay, here's the actions that are happening. Again, the commitment is to say we're good for the money. These agreements are when we actually write the check. So with that, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Ryan?
No question, Mr. Chair. Just 2 points to go further on. Thank you, Mike, for presenting all that information. During the budget conversations, one of the big questions that always comes up is why levy at the statutory maximum for the regional rail authority? And I think this presentation demonstrates that really clearly. You build up the funding needed not only for this line, but 2 others that when we go through the process with Met Council and the FTA, saying, do you have the available resources to back your vision? This lays out how we in fact have been building that up. And I just wanted to pause and acknowledge that spot, because years worth of board decisions and my predecessor working with you all on budgets to put that money aside comes to fruition at moments where we get asked for funding, and those are very limited moments. The second piece is another reasonable question to be asking as the gold line comes to fruition is what about the other lines? How do they work in concert? How are we juggling funding for all three? And when we had the county's transit improvement board, we used to have the program of projects developed at a regional level to look at that work. I just wanted to let you know that Public Works has been working with our finance department. This fall, for the first time, Ramsey County will have its own program of projects that comes before this board. And I think that's an important piece for all of you and the public to see how we are planning to finance and sustain these important investments in the East Metro.
And thank you for all of that, and thank you for that, County Manager. Just to say that I'm really happy to hear that, because as the member on TAB, our Transportation Advisory Board, which we do go, we do the regional solicitation for our projects, and it's the one that we've been, doing all this, we've been working with the formula that we grant projects on, that it will be really helpful to have that list, that we'll be able to prioritize for the Transportation Advisory Board, what projects we ask for. And this money is really going to be valuable, because I know one of the things we're talking about is should we do more projects and ask for more local contribution. If we ask for more local contribution, we can actually do more projects region-wide. And so those are the things that we're actually going to be talking about doing. So it's good to have the availability of that funding.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Mike.
Thank
Good
you,
work.
Commissioners.
I think we're done, correct, Mike?
Yes.
No, nothing further? Okay. Having no further discussion, I believe we're going to, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Hearing no discussion, roll call.
Roll call.
Oh, we're
Oh, we're
adjourned.
You got a gavel.
He's like,
I feel
I want
like
to
you got a gavel.
You are in charge.